It's a very early morning in December. I think it might have been the week of or just before Christmas. It's quiet, snowy, one of those very early mornings where no one is outside or even awake in their homes. It's a clear morning with very little clouds, and the moon is still up. From my house to work, it's a less than 10-minute walk across a long courtyard behind a church and right up to the lot. I'm just walking through the snow, listening to music. It feels silly, but I just had that feeling to look up, and right then coming out of a cloud is a very bright, warm, spherical light. I've always thought of its size like a quarter or so held at arm's length. It's just beautiful, radiant, like a candle glowing without any flickering or sputtering. I'm just lost in its light. It comes out from the cloud, and seems to almost stop, right there over me. At this point I start to lose my mind. I'm shouting in this open, snowy field, pointing, just flabbergasted. I fumble with my phone and it clicked in my mind how shaky cam footage of unintelligible lights existed. Just as I'm starting to take my first steps, it then gently starts to move again, does a very neat U-turn, and disappears over some trees. No noise, no fanfare, nothing. Just silent, beautiful, and it felt so unattached to the world around it.
My childhood home has had some weird stuff happen. Nothing bad, but definitely has ghosts. When we first moved there when I was 5, I was looking out the living room window and saw a young boy and girl running in the yard, but they were in vintage style clothes and white translucent. My mom has seen some things. She doesn't drink, do drugs, or take medications, so I believe her. One time my dad woke her up by having a coughing burst. He ended up having pneumonia at like 2 a.m. When she woke up, she saw a translucent lady standing over my dad in a robe, and her hair in tight curlers. The next day or so, my mom told our elderly neighbor about it, and she told my mom. She described the previous owner to a T. Now this is the crazy part. About where my mom saw the lady standing in her room is where the previous owner had passed away. My mom didn't tell me about this until I was much older. Another time when I was in elementary school, 5th-ish grade, my friend snuck a Ouija board over because my mom was dead against them. At this point, I didn't know she had seen stuff. So we were in my bedroom using it, and out of nowhere, my cat, who was sound asleep on the bed, stood up, arched her back with all of her hair standing straight up, and ran out of the room. My dog at the time would also refuse to go in my room.
I moved in with my grandfather to care for him during late stage Alzheimer's. Lived there in the basement in-law suite for around 1.5 years before he passed, and for a while after, while we worked on cleaning the place up to eventually sell. Shortly after he passed, maybe a couple weeks, I was downstairs just getting into bed when I heard footsteps upstairs. They were very distinctly footsteps, not an animal on the roof or something. Immediately I panicked because I'm a 20-something woman alone in a house. I then got 2 notifications on my phone from the dining room and living room security cameras that movement was detected. I checked the footage and there was nothing. I texted a friend and asked them to call the police and tell them there was an intruder at my address. I didn't want to call myself in case the intruder heard me and knew someone was home. The footsteps continued going from room to room. About 10 minutes later, I see flashlights passing by the basement windows. The police had arrived. My friend called me back, and the police told them to tell me to come to the back door. So I did. They said they did a perimeter check of the property and house. All doors were locked, and there weren't any signs of forced entry. They told me to stay where I was, and they would do a complete sweep of the house. Nothing. No one. 3 officers did the sweep. So it's not like someone could have snuck out while they were searching, and the upstairs of the house was down to the studs at this point. Nor was there an accessible attic, so there were no hiding spots. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that incident, and still don't have an explanation.
I lived in an old apartment in 2002. The place was built in 1900, so it was just over 100 years old when I moved in. The living room and kitchen were fine, but the bathroom and bedroom were unnerving, like I just always felt like I was being watched, especially in the bedroom if the closet door was open. Those unnerving feelings just became moderately uncomfortable as I settled in. I felt safe in the bedroom, but only if the door was locked. One night I was dead asleep when there was a loud bang on my bedroom door. When I got up the courage to get out of bed, I checked the apartment and all the windows were closed and locked from the inside. The door still had the chain secured. No one was in there. I mentioned the closet in the bedroom. I never liked going in there. And I never liked if the door was open. For some reason in my head I would hear gasping noises. So for that reason the closet stayed closed. A month or more after I was woken to the bang on my door. I was dead asleep. But something woke me up, and it was a pressure on me like being held down. It was pitch black in my room. I couldn't see anything, but I knew some was standing over me. When I could finally turn on a bedside lamp, no one was there. After then, I couldn't sleep in the dark. I had to sleep with a lamp on. That incident scared the life out of me. And after that, the unnerving feeling of being watched intensified. Friends would come over and comment about being uncomfortable in the bathroom, like being watched. It became so uncomfortable for me. When I had the chance to move to another unit, I jumped at it. I packed up and got out. After me, several people rented the apartment, and they would move out within months. I became friendly with the building manager, and I told him that I felt the place was haunted. He kind of laughed it off. Years after, they were renovating the place. Building manager was doing some painting in there. The building owner was there too. I went and checked out the apartment, and it looked nicer. It didn't feel as creepy. I got to talking with the building owner, and through the course of conversation, he just throws it out there that a former tenant committed suicide in the closet by hanging themselves. He also mentioned that the original designer of the building lived in that apartment and died in there. I wasn't mad when I heard that, but felt validated that what I experienced was real.
While at uni, my friends and I ran out of booze. Hardly any shops were open because it was late on, so the only option was to walk the mile or so to the nearest 24-hour supermarket. Between the supermarket and the dorms we lived in was just row after row of suburban houses which all looked the same. As we were walking down one road, we passed a field with a large campfire and some people riding horses around it. There were people playing musical instruments and general sounds of a good time going on. The horses and fire and the lanterns which were dotted about gave it a very old-fashioned feel. Maybe 5 minutes after passing the field, now walking past houses again, one of my friends commented on how weird and out of place that gathering of people had been. My other friend and I had been thinking exactly the same thing, so, curious, we turned around and walked back to find out exactly what was going on. There was nothing there. Not just no people or horses, there was no field, just more and more houses. Even though we were absolutely certain we were on the right road, as we'd simply turned around, we walked up and down the neighboring roads too. We found nothing. We weren't drunk, though we'd had some drinks, and so I've got absolutely no idea what happened that night.
I came home from work one day to grab my spare tires. My sister was away at school 7 hours. Away, and neither of my parents were going to be home for another 5 hours at minimum. I ran in, changed my clothes, grabbed my tires, then drove to a garage to get them installed. I got home 2 hours later, and as I walked into the living room, there was a chair just sitting in the middle of the hallway and was facing the front door. I thought nothing of it, but didn't recognize the chair as being one that we owned. It was a standard metal folding chair that you would buy for a couple bucks at a retail store. I folded it up and propped it up against my dad's workbench in our garage. My mom gets home a couple hours later, and I ask her in passing why she left a metal chair in the middle of the hallway. She tells me we don't own any metal chairs, and that she hadn't been home up until an hour ago. I told her I came home and there was a metal chair just sitting in the middle of the hallway after I had gotten back from the garage. She told me to show her the chair, and when I went out to the garage to show it to her, it was gone. I looked high and low for that metal chair but couldn't find it. I swore to her that I wasn't on drugs and that I wasn't imagining things. She thought what I was telling her was strange, but didn't pay much attention to it. I never saw that chair again, nor do I know where it came from or where it went.